Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the State of Scaling panel. My name's John Adler. I'm subbing in for Nick Dodson in case any of you guys were expecting him. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves now, starting with this lovely lady on the end.
Hi everyone, I'm Christine Perry. I lead solution engineering at Scale Labs, and we are a layer 2 sidechain that enables scalability for the Ethereum network.
I'm Karl. I'm the CEO of Grid Plus. I'm also the inventor of the Phonon protocol. So Phonon is a hardware-enforced layer 0 off-chain scaling solution that allows people to trade any asset from any blockchain off-chain with no fees, and it has infinite scalability. So there's 8 billion people using the Phonon network. We can do 8 billion transactions per second. Oh, cool.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So I guess before we talk about the state of scaling, why don't we let each panelist describe how do you perceive scaling, or how do you guys define scaling? I guess starting with Karl, since you still have the mic.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, fundamentally scaling is increasing the availability or throughput of a blockchain by still maintaining the security and consensus guarantees that the blockchain is offering. There's definitely solutions to scale where you can break or moderate those guarantees in some way, where the ultimate moderation is effectively like using a database that's run by one person that's creating state transitions, right? So when we talk about scaling, if it's layer 0 or layer 2 or whatever it is, I think we also have to be like always very conscientious about what trade-offs we're making to understand what we're actually achieving in scaling and what security, economic, and consensus guarantees we maintain with whatever systems we create.
All right, and I think the question was about the
How do you
projects.
define or describe scaling?
Yeah, so the way Scale Network defines scaling is pretty much the idea that not everything needs to run on the Ethereum network. Like, we are high believers in the Ethereum network. Like, a lot of developers are there, a lot of projects are there, but they're running into a lot of friction around transactions and cost and speed. Right? And so while Ethereum is a great layer, what we're saying is that with the Scale network, if you want to run it within the Scale network, you're able to take your application that is written for an EVM model and deploy it within the Scale network, which is also based off of an EVM model. So your Solidity code on Ethereum works in Scale. But we're doing things a little bit differently. Instead of having one chain to rule them all, where any application can suddenly bring down the network because it's having too much transaction or too much throughput that the network's not able to handle, Scale gives each application their own chain. And so as you can imagine, when that happens, it means that you're not subjected to any other volatility within a network by other projects. But within this multi-chain world, you're able to have the best of both worlds. You have your own space, but then you are also able to interact with the other chains within that network. We call this new hub model. So we have liquidity hubs, we have NFT marketplace hubs, and because it's a gasless environment, you can go back and forth between all the different Scale chains in record time because it's all the transactions settle within 3 seconds. But you're also able to take advantage of the no cost. And I think that that's a really interesting way of tackling scaling by removing the frictions that developers are seeing on Ethereum and having those aspects run in the Scale network. I do believe that there's definitely space for all types of scaling out there, and I think that there's more use cases that can be handled by other networks for sure. But I think our approach is to pretty much help empower and make like gaming and NFT marketplaces and I guess liquidity and DEXs run in a better environment.
Thank you. So on the topic of other networks and so on, what layer 1 other than Ethereum do you think is doing something interesting to tackle a scaling problem? It doesn't necessarily mean that this layer 1 is doing everything well, but just is there some interesting innovation in one layer one outside of Ethereum in the scaling space?
So, yeah, when we're talking about layer one specifically, I think Satoshi Nakamoto introduced something very interesting in proof of work, and it basically created a strictly objective system through which humans could collaborate. And I think we lose much of that objectivity with proof of stake. So the scaling solutions that in layer one that I find most interesting are the ones that are using proof of work. Specifically in that realm, I think Kadena is doing interesting work. I think Conflux is doing interesting work, and I also think Quai Network is also an interesting thing. So they're all using proof of work. I personally think Quai Network is the best one because of kind of how it's doing scaling through hierarchical merge mining. But yeah, I think there's going to be advancements where you are able to scale in layer one in an EVM context using proof of work.
I was trying to think of a better network outside of Ethereum, and I couldn't think of one.
That's a perfectly valid answer.
So I know, there are other networks out there, and they're doing great work, but Ethereum is where the developers are and where they still are. Like, a lot of networks are, I'm sorry to say it, still kind of ghost chains. And Ethereum is not. Like, you still have so many projects that are making it work with the friction, and now taking the other scalability projects that are helping to advance the space to take it further. So I think Ethereum plus all the scaling solutions that are proof of stake or proof of work or whatever you want to use are definitely helping the foundational blockchain really grow. And I've been at Scale for 4 years, and our whole goal has been to support Ethereum. And I really believe that this is going to be the network that's going to definitely dominate. So sorry, I don't really have a good answer for.
No, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to do something tricky, which is that rather than another layer one outside of Ethereum, can you name some interesting innovations or some interesting ideas that have come out from off-chain protocols that are building on Ethereum, that are not your projects, of course?
Let's see. I want to say that one of the few projects that I've really impressed with is seeing the projects that are trying to take a holistic approach, where they want to connect all of the chains out there to make it so that way, regardless of where you come from, you can interact with the blockchain. And by that I mean bouncing between the Scale network to Ethereum to Binance Smart Chain to Polygon to Solana. Like Connect is one of those. Hopper is one of those. Poly Network is one of those. There are some really interesting projects that are really looking to make those connections happen. And I have to say I appreciate that. So.
Sounds good. Karl?
Sorry, what was the question again?
If there's any interesting ideas or innovations that are happening in off-chain protocols that are building on Ethereum, as opposed to layer ones, which was the previous question.
Yeah, okay. I mean, personally, I think, optimistic rollups, from my perspective, are one of the best sort of ways to do layer 2 scaling. The issue that you run into, though, but let's say we replicate a sufficient amount of state on an optimistic system, and let's say that optimistic system goes rogue and it needs to collapse back to Ethereum. In that case, I think it is questionable how readily doable that is. So like, you have a guarantee, but if everybody had to cash in on that guarantee with like a lot of state, it may not actually be there from a time point of view, and also like an economic threshold point of view. So it's difficult as you move more state and more complexity out. Like, if you thought of trying to collapse an Ethereum blockchain back into Ethereum, that would be super problematic.
Especially if that Ethereum blockchain was doing 10 or 100 times the TPS.
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't mind, because I didn't kind of give an overview of Phonon, if I could do that at some point.
I was about to ask that as the next question.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
sweet.
I guess we
Yeah.
can segue into the next question, which is, what is kind of the kernel of technical uniqueness that your project brings to the table?
Awesome, thank you. So, so Phonon is a hardware-enforced, off-chain layer 0 scaling solution. So I'll tell you kind of what the properties of it are, and then I'll give a brief technical description of how we're accomplishing it. So it's feeless, it's infinitely scalable, because with every new network participant, you're adding one more TPS. So it scales linearly with the number of network participants. It's perfectly private. There's no need to broadcast or advertise your transactions outside of anyone but your counterparty. It's interoperable with any blockchain. So when I use the word layer 0, I mean it in a very literal sense, because it doesn't depend on any protocol. The only thing Phonon understands is public-private key pairs. So as long as we support the signing curve that is supported by a blockchain, we support that blockchain. So if you think about it as a traditional technical stack, it's below the blockchains because it doesn't have dependencies on the protocols of the blockchains, hence layer 0. Did I get? So yeah, I think I got all the properties. What that functionally looks like is, and in the truest sense, we've recreated something that looks like digital cash, right? Like Bitcoin claims to be digital cash, but when I use cash, I don't have to sign a transaction, broadcast it on the internet, and get it mined into a ledger that's publicly viewable by nodes. I simply take a bill and I hand it to someone. So Phonon is exactly that. We can take any asset from any one of these monetary systems, we can wrap it in this Phonon layer, and now it becomes tradable just like a dollar bill. So as long as I can communicate, so her phone probably actually has a eSIM in it that supports Phonon, so does mine. We could just scan a QR code, create an ad hoc Bluetooth network, and I would physically, take a unique physical thing that's a Phonon on my phone, and it would go to her phone. So we did that without the internet, right? We did this in a verifiable way, we did this in a unique way, and we did this in an infinitely scalable way. The magic that's actually happening there is we're leveraging sort of the security guarantees that we can get from these secure enclaves that you find in smart cards, SIM cards, or the embedded SIMs on phones. And this basically allows us to create a key pair that we can guarantee only exist in exactly one spot on a card. We can guarantee that these cards can't be replicated, and then we can guarantee that we can atomically swap them. So you can take any asset, put it in Phonon, you can trade it 1 to an infinite number of times, and then withdraw it and take it back to layer 1. So what we've fundamentally done to wrap it up is we've created something that's a blockchain, except it doesn't have blocks, doesn't have a chain, doesn't have a ledger, doesn't have nodes, doesn't have miners, doesn't need the internet. There you go, Phonon.
But does it need electricity?
Sorry?
Does it need electricity?
Well, technically, I could put a Phonon on this card, and I could give it to you.
So the answer is also it doesn't need electricity. You add that
Correct,
to the list.
yes.
Okay, Christine?
Awesome. All right, thank you. That is pretty magical, I must say. I think, what's unique about Scale is, what's really cool is that it's a dApp that's running on Ethereum. By that I mean we have about 40 different smart contracts on Ethereum that help to orchestrate the network. And when you want to acquire a Scale chain for your application in order to speed it up and remove the transaction costs, you are able to stake Scale into an Ethereum smart contract and have your Scale chain appear. Once your Scale chain is created, again, you're not sharing space. And I think that that is a very unique take on scalability for applications because you're so used to thinking about transactions per second in a one-chain model, where what does that really mean if there's 1,000 applications running on that one chain? versus having it with your own Scale chain, it means that your possibilities are endless. You can have one chain for your application, or for some of our projects that are running on the Scale network, they have multiple chains that they're using, some for file storage, some for the interchain messaging protocol, and some just to run their game or their application code on another chain. And so the ability to be able to combine these Scale chains in a modular way, I think is a new approach to thinking about scalability, where typically you are just given one chain and you have to expect that that chain is going to do right by you and never crash. I think within the Scale network, what's really also unique is that the only thing that can happen within the Scale network is it can simply pause. It cannot crash. And we've had it running for, I think, arguably since October 2020 without incident. And I think that that is really unique in the space and very exciting. So yeah, I think, a lot of really exciting things happening within Scale Network.
So you would say that Scale never goes down, right?
Well, it hasn't gone down, which is awesome.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. So with respect to blockchain scalability, beyond what you guys are currently working on right now, do you see any interesting innovation that hasn't yet been implemented or that hasn't been deployed yet? Something that's like in the research phase, essentially. Do you guys see any of that? Or something that you would want to implement in the future in your projects?
Yeah, I mean, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big proponent of Quai Network. They're making a scalable EVM proof of work merge mine network. They're in testnet right now, so I think that still counts as a a research type thing. I think it's interesting. One of the interesting things about scaling generally, and why I think it's going to be an interesting couple of years, is it goes back to this concept of what guarantees are we giving up and what are we gaining? And depending on what you're doing, there's good trade-offs and bad trade-offs, but moving in certain ways isn't a panacea. There's usually a compromise of some sort. And it'll be interesting, and one of those compromises is just sharding liquidity out, right? So if you have different scaling solution or if you have many, many blockchains, right, you have issues about what's accessible to whom, under what security guarantees, and how long it takes to transition. So I think as we hopefully see L1 scale, maybe that's, sharding with Ethereum, maybe that's another project. And there's a lot more availability there. I think people are gonna more seriously think about the trade-offs and the economics of moving into whatever it is, if it's Phonon as an L0, or if it's Scale or optimistic rollups as an L2. I think those trade-offs are going to become more apparent, and it's going to people are going to start to identify them and then use the systems that kind of really benefit what they need to use them for. So there's going to be a consolidation in liquidity, and there's going to be kind of a an attrition of scaling solutions, I think, as we get more L1 activity.
All right. I was trying to think of something else, but I think this is probably the best example. Internally, we have a research sort of just sector in our engineering team, and they started to research what would it look like to deploy machine learning directly onto a blockchain. And as we were researching that, we realized we needed somewhere to actually store the trained models. And that's how we came up with file storage. So it's kind of like IPFS, but instead of having it outside of the chain, it's directly within the chain. And so you're able to store documents and files directly on your blockchain and have it proved, right? And so I think what's really cool about that is, NFTs are all the rage right now, but there's also this issue of the breakable link, Because if you have something stored somewhere else and something that's gone, if it's stored on Google Cloud, then what does that NFT really represent? Whereas if it's all wrapped into an actual verifiable object on the blockchain, I think that is a really interesting way of creating an asset that is supposed to be governed by the blockchain. And so while we haven't released machine learning yet, we have released file storage with the promise of releasing machine learning, which means that you'll be able to run trained models directly on the blockchain, specifically Scale, and have it sort of maybe, let's say, determine what pictures get saved to the blockchain, determine what words that you want to exclude or include, and even further. If you're familiar with machine learning, you can pretty much do infinite things with it. So I think that that's a really exciting, research thing that we're doing internally that I would love to see pushed out to the world for them to see.
That sounds amazing. Okay, on the topic of NFTs, you're only allowed to say the name and no explanation. But what's your favorite NFT project?
Crypto Coven.
Sorry?
Crypto Coven.
Crypto Coven. Oh yeah, the one with the ladies.
I can only say the word.
Karl?
Bored Ape Yacht Club.
Bored Ape Yacht Club. Okay. Good thing I'm not on this panel, because then I would also have to answer, but it's for me to know and you guys to find out later.
Let's hear it.
My favorite NFTs are ENS domains.
Man, if we're going to do that, I'm going to say Bitcoin UTXOs.
They are non-fungible. Okay, so
Just one more.
Oh,
Women
go ahead.
Rise as well. It's a really good project.
Yep. Okay, so back to more back to more serious topics, I guess. I guess NFTs are also pretty serious, but back to the topic at hand. ETH2 is supposed to launch relatively, or not launch, it's supposed to provide sharded data, we hope relatively soon, maybe in a year or two, give or take. First of all, what do you think about sharded Ethereum? And secondly, how will that affect, if it's positive or negative or neutral, how will it affect your project?
I think for the Skale network, it's a neutral change. I think we love to see it. We're excited to see it come. However, I guess I'm worried about what will happen once that is deployed, because you're going to have, I guess, assets on the layer 1 that arguably will live in different locations. And while for layer 2, I definitely see a place for it, for layer 1, I think the expectation is that everything exists on one single container, right? And so, but for our project, it's pretty neutral. Regardless of the changes that Ethereum makes, we are built to support it. So we will support ETH 2.0 the same way we support ETH 1.0.
So I would say Phonon itself is extremely neutral, because all we do is trade key pairs, so we don't care whose key pairs we're trading from where. The more scale you get on chain, the less need you potentially get for certain applications off chain. But I would say we're also neutral about it. However, if you're asking me my opinion about ETH 2.0, I think sharding is great. However, I don't think moving to proof of stake is great. And the reason I don't think moving to proof of stake is great is because if we did it today, Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, Binance would control 51% of stake. And unlike a proof of work system, when you have 51% of stake, where you can simply eclipse the network for a given period of time, potentially do a rollback, or you can start censoring transactions, kind of. If you have 51% of a proof of stake network, you can change the rules, and you can change the rules in perpetuity. And the problem that we have is that those entities that are going to control the majority of the stake also have banking charters, and their principal business is interfacing people with fiat currencies. And so if the regulators come in and say, if you still want to maintain access to the Western banking system via SWIFT and via whatever else, we need you to only process transactions on the Ethereum network that are in KYC'd accounts, I imagine that they might all do it. And then that would fundamentally change overnight what Ethereum is, because 51% of the stakers have a conflict of interest, which is keeping a banking license. So I'm less optimistic with moving to proof of stake. We'll see how it works out. But if I want to say something really controversial, if that happens, the federal government doesn't need to make a Fed coin. They can just co-opt Ethereum.
I think the actual number is 55% for those few exchanges, so that makes it even scarier.
Exactly, right? So, maybe that's a warning to people to not keep their money there and to have independent validators. But if you ever go above that threshold in a proof of stake system, you're in trouble.
So basically what you're saying is not your keys, not your crypto.
Not your keys, not your chain.
So if you have any money on centralized exchanges, you should withdraw it.
I agree. Buy Lattice 1 from Grid Plus and put your keys on there.
Okay, so one topic we haven't really brought up yet so far is zero knowledge proofs. People are pretty excited about the scalability benefits or the scalability potential of the usage of zero knowledge proofs. What are kind of your thoughts or opinions on the state of zero knowledge proofs? How applicable are they or not?
So I love zero knowledge proofs, is my hot take. So since Bitcoin has been invented, when people would talk to me about crypto, I would tell them they should look at zero knowledge proofs because it's the most interesting thing that's happened since Bitcoin was invented. And then since we've kind of came up with the phonon model, I say that's the most interesting thing besides ZK snarks that's been invented in crypto. But yeah, I'm super bullish on it, and I think there's great use cases for it. I think there's great demonstrations of how it can be used. Multi-party computation is super interesting. Privacy through things like Tornado Cache is needed and interesting. I think fundamentally, if you're wanting to maintain some of those like economic objective guarantees from an L1 in scaling, like you need some form of provability, and that's how to do it. I will say, and maybe this is a little bit technical, some manifestations of systems that leverage ZK technology, they're having to leverage something called a fine coordinate ECC, and they're interfacing with systems that don't natively support a fine coordinate ECC, so like MetaMask or like a Grid Plus wallet, or any wallets or any hardware wallets for that matter, they don't support it. But a fine coordinate ECC allows for like easy provability in ZK snark land. But what some systems are doing because of that is they're basically using a signature to seed a private key that's cached in your browser when you're using these L2 systems, which is removing all security guarantees from that and putting it as a key in your browser cache, and the users aren't actually privy to any of this. So you could be sitting there with a hardware wallet thinking your cards are like in this great storage situation. You get onto an L2 and your private keys are actually in your cache. So that's like my one gripe against it, but otherwise I love ZK snarks.
That sounds very scary. Okay, Christine?
Yeah, and I know we're out of time, so I'll just say that we love ZK proofs, and for the Scale network, they can run within the Scale network, EVM compliant, so no complaints there. But I guess we're at time, so what I will say is really great, I think, being here on the panel with everybody.
Yep, thank you so much. And how can people learn more about your projects?
Yes, so you can learn more about the Scale network by going to scale.network. And definitely reach out to us or come see us at the booth. We have a booth here, or come to our support station if you're hacking.
Well, usually I like the
You can learn more about Phonon at phonon.network. You can learn about Grid Plus at gridplus.io. We also have a Grid Plus booth. So you can get Phonon cards, you can buy lattices, come talk to us, join our Discord, all the above.
Okay, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.